A murdered outcast returns, and even his broken meridians become suspicious. Spoiler warning for chapters 20 through 29 of this Chinese manhua. After years of being treated as useless because of his damaged profound veins, Xiao Chei's survival keeps disrupting the people who expected him to stay weak, quiet, or dead. This stretch of the story pushes beyond simple bullying. Clan elders argue in public, Qingyue is pulled toward frozen cloud immortal palace, and payback starts moving through the Xiao household like a ghost nobody can control. Chapter 20 opens with tension already boiling. A white-haired elder launches a bright blue energy attack at a dark-haired man, and the blow knocks him off balance in front of watching elders and disciples. That public strike matters because it turns a private grievance into something the whole courtyard has to witness. After the impact, the scene becomes a formal dispute, with senior figures, younger men, and a young woman in pale blue caught in the middle. An arrogant purple-haired man and other angry young men push the argument harder, trying to control the meaning of what just happened. But the calm long-haired man in white does not panic. His quiet, threatening response ends the chapter by making one thing clear: status alone will not settle this fight anymore. Chapter 21 pulls the conflict back to the injured young man, who is shown recovering after collapsing. An elderly white-haired man checks on him with concern, while attendants and a maid hover nearby, turning the scene into a small recovery room full of pressure. Qingyue appears near him, calm but watchful, and their exchange outside the formal crowd feels more personal than political. She is not simply observing the clan drama, her presence changes how everyone else looks at him. A servant brings tea, people gather around the residence, and the mood shifts from care to scrutiny. By the end, a red-haired young man steps forward in front of others, confrontational and arrogant. Qingyue watches the standoff, and the recovering young man is forced back into public judgment before he is fully steady. Chapter 22 raises the scale of the dispute with the arrival of frost power. After the dramatic cover image, the scene returns to an outdoor platform where clan and sect figures are already gathered. A red-haired young man argues loudly, while a white-and-gold-dressed elder and other cultivators try to manage the situation. Then the atmosphere changes, an icy blue humanoid form or spiritual projection appears, and the confrontation suddenly feels bigger than local clan pride. A woman in elegant white-blue robes, surrounded by frost-like energy and flowing ribbons, becomes the center of attention. The men who were arguing now have to react to someone tied to a colder, higher authority. The chapter turns Qingyue's situation into a doorway to frozen cloud immortal palace, where personal marriage politics collide with a power no Xiao clan youth can easily challenge. Chapter 23 focuses on Qingyue and the question everyone else wants to control: whether she will leave the Xiao household and follow her master. The senior Frost Palace woman questions her about the rules and her intention, while Qingyue explains that her master allowed her to remain with the Xiao family only for a period before returning to Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace. The red-haired young master grows frustrated, but his anger cannot change the hierarchy in front of him. A younger Frost Palace disciple pleads, the senior woman refuses to be pressured, and an older Xiao elder steps in with the practical truth: the Xiao clan cannot afford to oppose someone of that level. Qingyue remains composed and asks to see Xiao Chei before leaving, turning a forced departure into an unresolved emotional thread. Chapter 24 transforms the clan dispute into horror. At night, clan members near a residence gate see a pale blue human-shaped figure appear, resembling Xiao Chei. The apparition addresses Xiao Yunhai and suggests that it has returned for a reason, immediately shaking the older man's composure. Then the figure accuses Xiao Yunhai of arranging Xiao Chei's death through Xiao Yulong. That accusation is powerful because it drags the hidden murder plot into public fear. Onlookers panic, some flee or collapse, and the ghostly figure grows larger above the gate like a curse made visible. Xiao Yunhai tries to dismiss it as a trick, but fear spreads faster than logic. Later, the same blue figure appears over the sleeping Xiao Yulong with a glowing blade, ending on the threat that payment must be made in blood. Chapter 25 continues the night attack inside the residence, where the first thing people find is blood. Armed men enter, an older purple-haired man reacts with shock and fury, and a bald subordinate or elder stands nearby as the scene turns accusatory. A wounded elderly man lies collapsed and bleeding, making the damage impossible to deny. The purple-haired man confronts a white-haired elder, while a woman in dark red and black appears near the injured person, alarmed by what has happened. Flames or an explosion-like glow suggests that the violence is spreading beyond one room. The chapter becomes a chain reaction, accusations, panic, and physical clashes all erupt at once. A young man in blue reacts from elsewhere, and an icy blue-robed woman intervenes as the conflict worsens, but another blade strike and blood leave the outcome unresolved. Chapter 26 gives the payback arc a sharper setup. Outside a cold cave at night, Xiao speaks with his grandfather Xiao. Xiao worries about him living alone in such a place and even teases him about a mysterious little fairy, while Xiao insists that he is not dreaming and says Xiao Lingxi told him to come back. Xiao's response is important. He stops trying to force the answer and chooses to let Xiao decide, quietly acknowledging that his grandson has changed. Then the scene cuts to a banquet hall, where Xiao Yulong drunkenly celebrates the influence he expects from Xiao Sect. Guests flatter him, feeding his arrogance, until a bloodied person is thrown into the room. A white-haired figure arrives with icy blue force, identifies himself as Xiao Baichao from Xiao Sect, and announces a message connected to Xiao. Chapter 27 slows the pace but deepens the mystery. In a cave-like setting, an older white-haired man, a dark-haired young man, and a frightened young girl in green gather for a serious conversation. The young man comforts the girl while the elder questions and observes them, creating a scene built less on combat and more on responsibility. A burst of light or impact interrupts the emotional tension, and the girl remains central to the exchange. Then the story shifts into a sepia-tone explanation, showing rough-looking men, two travelers, a veiled purple-dressed woman, and a blue-robed young man. The sequence feels like a backstory about identity, travel, and something hidden or carried forward. By the end, a wrapped bundle appears important, but the exact revelation remains unclear, keeping the chapter's title as a question rather than a clean answer. Chapter 28 turns that uncertainty into an emotional vow. The chapter opens with the red-haired young woman beside a dark-haired young man, then moves into a formal conversation with an elderly white-haired master. The elder appears to present or channel an orange glowing object or energy while addressing the younger pair, making the scene feel ceremonial rather than casual. The dark-haired man raises his hand as if making a solemn response, while the red-haired girl reacts with visible emotion. A spiritual-looking scene follows, with figures gathered around a glowing vertical object, suggesting that this promise is tied to duty, power, or inheritance. Later, the red-haired girl is shown held in a dramatic blossom-filled moment and then crying on the ground. By the close, the young man and girl speak more intimately, turning elder instruction into a personal commitment. Chapter 29 opens at the Blue Wind Profound Palace, shifting the story from clan payback to cultivation mystery. Xia Yuanba meets a composed woman in white, and the conversation turns to Xiao. She says she saw him roughly 2 months earlier, after he had fallen into danger but survived, and asks whether Xia Yuanba noticed anything strange about him. The focus becomes profound veins. Using blue energy around Xia Yuanba's wrist, she explains that Xiao's original veins should have been damaged, yet his current state does not match that expectation. A glowing human diagram highlights meridian pathways, and the discussion introduces the heavenly god's spiritual veins as an extraordinary constitution beyond normal limits. The chapter then cuts to a worried attendant reporting that a young master wants to go to the fire inn, before a pale blue man appears near a blue-lit seated figure. This 10-chapter run is doing two things at once. On the surface, it is a payback arc. Xiao's enemies are frightened, exposed, and dragged into violent consequences after believing they could bury the truth. But underneath that, the manhua is widening its power system. Frozen Cloud Immortal Palace shows that the Xiao clan is tiny compared with outside forces, and Blue Wind Profound Palace introduces the possibility that Yunche's body is not merely healed, it may be fundamentally abnormal. That is the real hook going forward. Payback explains why he acts, but his profound veins explain why the world will eventually have to notice him. Subscribe for the next recap, where the fire-in meeting may expose even more about Yunche's impossible rise.